On History You Should Know, we're going back to World War II. How did a couple of letters, an eyelash, and a man who didn't exist change the course of the war? This is the story of Operation Mincemeat. 1943, kalagitnaan ng World War II. Dahan-dahang nababawi ng Allies ang mga teritoryo na sinakop ng Nazis. The Allies knew that the fastest way to end the war would be to go back to mainland Europe and make their way towards Germany. France was difficult because it was heavily guarded. But in 1943, they earned a new entry point. Matapos manalo sa North Africa, may pagkakataon ang Allies na sakupin ang Italy. Dubbed as the soft underbelly of Europe, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill pushed for the invasion of Italy as the better option. The entry point would be Sicily, an island to the south. Sa puntong ito, dahil sa sunod-sunod na pagkatalo, humina na ang Italian military. Maraming ayaw naman talagang lumaban at ayaw sa gera. Their fascist leader Benito Mussolini was later removed from power, imprisoned, and executed. So, with the Italians weakened, it's up to the Germans to carry on most of the fighting. The Allies had a major problem. It was obvious to the Nazis that Sicily would be the entry point, and the Allies knew that the Nazis knew. Siguradong maraming casualties ang magiging resulta. So, a group of British naval intelligence officers thought it was worth a shot to try and fool the enemy. And the way they were gonna do it is all thanks to this document. Ito ang Trout Memo. Mga dokumento na puno ng mga suggestion kung paano manlinlang ng kaaway. Basically, deception tactics to use against the enemy. Spy stuff. The document had Rear Admiral John Godfrey's name on it, Director of Naval Intelligence. But many believe it was actually written by his deputy, a man named Ian Fleming, who would later go on to write a novel that would introduce the world to a spy you may have heard of.
Bond. James Bond.
Two naval intelligence officers, Ewan Montague and Charles Chumley, don't know why it's pronounced that way either, saw the memo and thought this is worth a shot, and they committed to it. The suggestion? Dress up a corpse to look like a British officer, plant fake secret intelligence files on the body, leave the body somewhere the enemy could stumble upon it, let them see the documents, and hope they believe it's true. Parang suntok sa buwan sa dami ng kailangang mangyari. But these men thought, what the hell, might as well try. They put together this bizarre and macabre idea. An idea that was later called Operation Mincemeat. Task 1. Find a dead body, male, someone who died of something difficult to detect with an autopsy, and make him look like a drowning victim. Why? Because if the enemy sees a drowning victim, they would be less likely to conduct an autopsy. If ever they do, they won't immediately detect the poison. It didn't take very long to find one. It was a man named Glendur Michael, a homeless man who died of eating poisoned bread. Task 2. Create a false identity. It had to be a common name that wasn't going to raise an alarm with the Nazis. At pinili nilang pangalan ay William Martin, Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. It's a common name among the men who were serving with the British forces, so the Germans wouldn't be suspicious. Task 3. Create the story of the last 2 weeks of William Martin's life. They were gonna do it with pocket litter. That's the spy term for documents and objects to be placed on the body. They created fake letters, fake orders, and even a fake girl. Sulat mula sa fiancé niya. I miss you. I heard you were being sent away and it's not going to be in Italy. There was also a picture with an inscription that says, "Till death do us part," in the back. Of course, the woman they photographed was a secretary who worked for the British War Office. There were theater tickets, keys, and even a receipt for an engagement ring. Then, handcuffed to his hand was the real prize, a briefcase containing the top secret orders saying that the attack will happen in Greece and Sardinia, not Sicily. Task 4. Plant a fake ID on the officer. Madali yung mga detalyeng kailangang isulat. Pero nahirapan sila sa picture. Taking a photo of his face and using it on the ID was not an option because he looked dead. How they did it was a pure stroke of luck. During a completely unrelated meeting, Chumlee saw a man who looked exactly like the dead man. What were the chances? He approached him about the mission and he gladly said yes. Task 5, leave the body for the enemy to find. But the tricky part was who they wanted to find. William Martin. Kailangan nila ng confirmation na nahanap na ang katawan. Kaya ibig sabihin, gusto nilang maibalik ang katawan sa British government. The Germans won't return anybody they find themselves and it might be too suspicious and convenient. So, they thought to make the Spaniards find it. Why? Dahil technically, neutral ang Spain noong World War II. If they found the floating body, they would return it to Britain. Pero kung nahanap nga nila, paano nila malalaman na nakita ng Germans yung fake documents? Again, even if Spain was technically neutral, a lot of their officials were pro-Nazi and pro-fascism. And the British knew that. So, the final touch to indicate that the files were read, the British placed an eyelash on one of the documents. As in, pilik mata. If anyone opened the case and read the documents, the eyelash would easily be misplaced. And so, Major William Martin was ready for his mission. He was left on the waters near Spain. And true enough, weeks later, the body was returned to the British. At nang binuksan nila ang briefcase at tiningnan ang documents, the eyelash was missing. But still, there was no guarantee that the Germans saw the intelligence. July 1943. The invasion of Sicily. The largest invasion fleet in history up to that point was made up of 160,000 anxious Allied soldiers. They knew the fighting was going to be intense and bloody, the resistance was going to be brutal, and the casualties were going to be high. After all, Sicily was the obvious logical choice for both the Allies and the Axis. After a few hours, the ships made their landing. This was it. The moment those doors opened, all hell was gonna break loose. Except it didn't. In fact, there was almost no resistance. Where were most of the enemy soldiers? As it turns out, they were in Greece and Sardinia. Operation Mincemeat worked. Aside from saving vehicles, tanks, and equipment, it also saved thousands of soldiers. The casualties were around 5,000, a number far below what the Allies expected. Thanks to the brilliant minds of Montague, Chumlee, and everyone else involved in the mission, and the unbelievable suggestion of a writer who, unsurprisingly, later on gave birth to history's most famous spy. Paborito ko ang mga storya ng World War II at isa to sa mga pinakagusto ko. It is now a movie on Netflix and even a musical. Follow for more, and boom! Now you know.